Emotional Landscapes is a multidisciplinary virtual visual art exhibition with imagery, poetry, words, music and discussion. The exhibition is inspired by an artistic response to peace, health and well-being, influences of the pandemic and themes of well-being and happiness intersecting with new borders of time and space in a changing landscape. The title for this unique virtual visual art and multidisciplinary exhibition, Emotional Landscapes, was created by artist Noelle McAlinden from a series of creative conversations with writer, theatre and filmmaker Mary Moynihan. The conversations continued to encompass the work of visual artist Hina Khan, violinist and composer Lisa McLaughlin, and writer and choreographer Fiona Bawn Thompson, bringing together different artists who, in their own way, were responding to the changing emotional landscapes of our evolving world. The panel discussion for Emotional Landscapes is based on responses to the emotional impact of COVID-19, ways to promote positive mental health and well-being, and a reflection on the space that exists within and between us in a changing landscape.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Emotional Landscape panel discussion. My name is Stephen Hearn. I am a cultural anthropologist and a community facilitator and researcher for Smashing Times Theatre Company. I'm delighted to welcome our speakers here today, and we're discussing more about the emotional landscape and mental health practitioners and visual artists and the role with regards to emotional landscapes. And delighted to welcome our first speaker, Noelle, who will be given more of an insight on her work in creative landscapes and visual arts.
One of the exhibitions that I've had a recurring theme for me, and particularly during COVID, has been emotional landscapes. And I was delighted when talking with Mary about the potential of this exhibition and this opportunity for the Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival for 2020. And I was really curious, I suppose, about the possibility of revisiting that theme of emotional landscapes and looking at the space in particular between us. And that theme has recurred with me right throughout COVID. I live on my own. I live in Enniskillen. My family are very, very much close to me and part of me, but very geographically disparate. And yet, as I know that the space between us has become greater, I feel that there has been a greater intimacy in how we've connected, particularly during, and through technology. And the piece behind me is called Emotional Landscape, the space between us. And you'll notice that some of the images are very, very abstract. It is an immersive piece. It is very emotionally charged. I tend to use very, very strong colours, very, very vibrant colours. And I also like to work on the surface of the canvas beforehand. My background initially would have been in painting and ceramics. So I like to use that tactile texture to inform the pieces that I make. And then I work with paint and found objects and materials as well to build the surface. I'm particularly attracted to the whole idea of positive and negative spaces. And I suppose that the whole idea of the space between us, physically the space between us, and emotionally the space between us is something that I think is very apparent and very pertinent during this particular time.
Thank you very much, Noelle, for that fantastic presentation. Perhaps you'd like to give us a bit more information on your work and role as a mental health campaigner.
So while I have taken early retirement from my former job within the Education Authority as an arts advisor, I call it refirement, and I'm particularly refired about the opportunity about using arts to support our own mental health and well-being and our own self-expression. And I feel really, really strongly that if we don't express ourselves in whatever art form that might be, and we choose to depress it, then that ultimately will have major impacts on our mental health. We as a family have been impacted on like many. Suicide is something that we have had to face, not just once but twice. And I feel very, very strongly and very passionately about the opportunities that we find ourselves in to try and support others. I've been asked to be an ambassador for suicide prevention, and I feel very strongly that we should be looking at celebrating life and looking at ways in which we can encourage and enthuse and inspire others to do the same. It's been a very, very sad time for our family, and there has been huge sadness in many families and many communities. And I feel that the arts have a huge role to play, in fact a very, very important role to play I, along with many others throughout the island of Ireland, are proactive in encouraging as many people as possible to take on board any training that they can, whether it's online, whether it's face-to-face training, which has been obviously compromised because of COVID. But I feel very, very strongly there are opportunities for us to connect, to support and be self-expressed. And I do feel very, very strongly that during COVID that there have been many, many good experiences that people have had, certainly in using technology, but also there have been huge experiences that people have had that I have no doubt will impact on their mental health. And I feel that the arts, in whatever form that comes, whether it's moving image, whether it's dance, the visual or performing arts, we all have a part to play. And I feel that we have a unique insight and a way into looking at many creative solutions to some of the problems that currently exist. So my invitation is to everyone to take time, to take stock and to take up the opportunity and join me to do some of the online training that's currently offered to support not just your family and my family, but everyone out there, and perhaps save a life.
That was wonderful, Noelle. Perhaps you could give us now a little bit more information about your work with borders and colonialism.
So as part of the festival, obviously looking at borders and colonialism is something that is quite apparent, and I really enjoyed the conversation that Hina and I had with Mary and Frida about the whole area of borders. And I suppose for me, the arts transcend borders. I live in the north of Ireland, the north of the island of Ireland, in Enniskillen, and I'm very, very conscious that we are quite close to lots of the Cavan, the Leitrim and Monaghan border. And yet I don't see the border. I see a connection to neighbours and to friends and to family. And I suppose one of the things that I feel attracted to as part of this exhibition is this idea of the space between us. You know, the space has been reduced, even though we are encouraged to stay apart. But that space has been reduced because of technology, which I really, really welcome. And irrespective of culture, of standing, of religious, or political view, that space between us seems to be getting smaller. And I welcome that, and I really see the opportunity where the arts in all its forms and all its glory can actually help us understand, connect, and also not just simply tolerate each other, but actually respect each other, and I welcome that opportunity. I'm delighted and thrilled to be part of this year's festival, and particularly in providing an opportunity to see some of my work, emotional landscape, the space between us. And it is a theme that I've mentioned before that is recurrent, and the pieces that I will be presenting will be, again, not unlike the one behind me in the sense of abstract pieces, images merging, almost figurative, and particularly too with the balance between the negative and the positive shapes. This whole idea of the space between us is something that's very, very poignant to me, I feel, at this particular time. And one of the words that I'm playing around with in some of the imagery is the idea of intimacy. And some would argue that we can't have that intimacy, or if we don't have face-to-face contact, or we don't have connections with people in these current times. But I actually would argue that in some cases, certainly we as a family and friends are finding that the nature of the conversations that we're having are much more authentic. We haven't time to waste. We aren't really interested in small talk. And I suppose for me, the purpose of my art is to reach and connect and to move and inspire as well. And I do that through colour, through shape, through texture. So the pieces of work, while small in scale, I'm looking forward to see what the response will be when they are projected. I'm working with a very, very talented artist as well and creative, Paul Marshall, who has created some lovely pieces together. And one of the pieces is Moonlit Lullaby, where he's taken one of my paintings, lullaby trees holding up the sky, and he has created a landscape, a virtual landscape around it. So I'm very excited about that collaboration, and I hope to show you some of the other pieces that I will be creating both in a virtual context as well. So I'm very grateful to Mary and all the team at Smashing Times. It's a fantastic festival. I'm delighted to be part of it, and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noelle. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Hina Khan, who's going to chat more about the role of emotional landscapes and in particular her work on the influence of pandemics.
in relation to COVID, I contacted two different artists and I asked them the situation and how people are facing it and what is the psychologically impact on the people or on the artist about the COVID. And they all coming back to me with the poems and with different kind of writing text. They email me about the COVID. Like everybody is in the same boat in this time period. And this is very difficult time for everybody. And while I show them my work and they are all agreed with my thinking about the intense situation, while I'm producing this work, it is highly connected with me because my brother has got affected with this COVID and I was thinking like he will be die. But luckily he is safe now. But it make me to produce something which is highlighting the current situation and current time period. Like we are facing very difficult time and it is very intense as an artist, as a human being. I read an article about a woman, she lost both of her children. One is 18 years old and one is 22 years old. And within 11 days, she lost their two children due to COVID in America. So these things are making me to force me to create such kind of installation, and the community response was quite positive. And the other artists are coming and see my work, and they saw I produced the all installation. It's a huge installation, and I have produced it within the 5-6 days, and I work with my fullest energy to show up how pandemic affect me and how I feel about the people who died and who lost their lives.
Thank you very much, Hina. Our next speaker is Emer Burke, a counselling psychotherapist who's going to chat more about her work in relation to positive mental health. And perhaps, Emer, you would like to introduce a little bit more about that there and your work in relation to mental health.
Thank you, Stephen. My name is Emer Burke and I'm a counselling psychologist in private practice in Kilkenny, and I've been working for the last 12 years with Smashing Times Theatre Company. And I'd like to talk about ways you can take care of yourself or self-care in this time of pandemic. And it's very, very important that you take care of your basic needs. And we start off, for example, with a good diet, eating clean food, eating 3 good meals a day, drinking plenty of water, having plenty of fluids. I mean, this sounds very boring, but it's these basic building blocks that actually help us maintain our mental health. Having enough sleep, that's very, very important. And exercise. It's found that people who have enough exercise and enough sleep do far better mentally than those who don't. So having a spiritual practice is important. Whether you have a religion or not, it doesn't matter. Whether it's out walking in nature, hugging trees, or going to church, or saying prayers. That research has shown that people who have a spiritual practice or religious beliefs that sustain them and nurture them, they do well in times of adversity. They recover much quicker from illness, for example, or from surgery. Doing things you like is really, really important. So make a list of the things that you enjoy. I know at this time things are very, very limited and we are restricted. But even within those restrictions, if you can find things that you enjoy doing, do so. Listening to music is very important. Unfortunately, we call this socialization, but for me it's really physical isolation. So it's important that you have social connections, either by phone, by the various technological means. It's very, very important to stay in touch with friends, loved ones and family so that you don't feel so isolated. Being out in nature is very important if you can get out there. It's very, very healing to be among trees and the grass and flowers, and nature research tells us, and we know this anyway, but research tells us that this also contributes very, very well to positive mental health. One of the things that's very, very important is around having self-compassion. You may be very impatient with yourself at this time, feeling you're not coping like other people are. It is difficult for everybody. Now, people react differently. So it's important that you have self-compassion and patience with yourself. Practicing gratitude. Gratitude for the smallest of things. It could be, you know, the sun shone today, you had a good night's sleep, or somebody rang you, or you saw a nice flower. The smallest of things, that if we can practice gratitude, it makes life that much easier. And these tips are for people of all ages, regardless whether you're young, middle-aged or old, it's the same. One thing that is important is recognizing your attitude to this pandemic. This is something we cannot control. And technology has given us the illusion in the past that we can control things. You know, we can buy things online, we can do things quickly, we can travel all over the world. And now we're not able to control things. But what we can do is control the present moment, right now. We cannot control external events, but we can control how we react to them. And it's important to be able to choose what it is you can control. If you fight against something that cannot be changed, it causes more distress. So if you think of the serenity prayer, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That kind of attitude can really help you, because right now, in this pandemic, when our movements are restricted, the only thing is this present moment. So it's even pausing for a moment to actually think, what can I do right now? I can take a breath. I can go and make a cup of tea. I can ring a friend or text a friend. I can't deal with the bigger issues in the world at the moment, but right now is what I can control. That actually can bring about a sense of calm. It's also important to be able to spend time doing things that bring you relaxation. Meditation can really help. There are plenty of websites that can help you to find meditation techniques, breathing techniques. Practicing mindfulness can be really, really important at times like this. The arts are very, very important. Poetry, literature, art, theatre, very, very important. And with social technology and the internet, we have access to all these media to help us manage our mental health. And that is very, very important. And also they bring us joy. They bring us entertainment. And these two are also very important.